Hey Growing Zone kids, it's Pastor Jason. Are you ready for a couple more questions from the New City Catechism for Kids? Question number 16 is, what is sin? And the answer is, sin is rejecting or ignoring God in the world He created, not being or doing what He requires in His law. The last few weeks we talked about how God's law is like a target and how it's impossible for us to hit it. And we can't hit it. The reason why we can't hit it is because we have sin in our lives. Ever since Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, they gave everybody after them sin. And so every human being from Adam and Eve has sinned. But sin is not just something we get from Adam and Eve. Sin is also something we choose. We choose sin every single day. God created us to know Him and to worship Him. Did you know that? That's the reason why God created us, so that we could know Him and worship and enjoy Him. But because we choose to sin, that means that we choose a lot of times, in fact every day, to ignore God or reject God or not be the people or do the things that God tells us to do in His law. So we sin every day. When we ignore God, ignore the things He tells us to do, or don't do the things He does tell us to do on purpose and that kind of thing, we choose sin every day. So sin is something we get, but it's also something we choose. And this has a consequence. A consequence is when you sin, something bad happens. And so one of the consequences of sin is that we can't enjoy God like we should. I have a little experiment for you, okay? Try this next time you eat something. Next time you eat something, plug your nose and then put the food in your mouth, chew it up and swallow it. But keep your nose plugged the whole time. You know what's going to happen? You're not really going to be able to taste it all that well. That works great if you're trying to eat broccoli. But that's not so great if you're eating something that you do like. Let's say you have a really good birthday cake in front of you and you go to eat it, but your nose is plugged up. You want to taste it, right? You want to taste how great that cake is, but you can't if your nose is plugged. You see, sin is kind of like that. Imagine for a minute, now I know this is silly, but imagine for a minute that God is like the best birthday cake in the whole world, and you want to have a big bite, a big slice of that birthday cake. But when you go to eat it, your nose is plugged up and you can't taste it. Yeah, that wouldn't be very good. You want to taste it. You want to enjoy the cake, but you can't because something is stopping you from tasting it. Sin makes it so that we can't enjoy God like we should. You see, God is the most wonderful and amazing thing in the whole world. And we should be able to enjoy Him. If we didn't have sin in our lives, we would be able to joyfully enjoy Him, and it would be fully satisfying and wonderful. But because we choose to sin and we have sin living in our hearts, we can't enjoy God to the fullest. And you know what happens when we don't find our joy and satisfaction in God like we should? Well, we try to find our joy and our satisfaction in other things. Well, the next question, question 17, teaches us a word that means just that. Question 17 is, what is idolatry? And the answer is that idolatry is trusting in created things rather than the Creator. You see, back in Bible times, people made statues, little statues of gold or silver or other precious things or even wood, and they worshiped these statues, which means they thought these statues were the most important things in the world. They loved these statues and trusted in these statues more than anything else. Yeah, that's right. They thought that these statues were gods, and they thought that these statues could help them out, right? Help them give them a good harvest that year if they're farmers, or help keep their family safe, or help give them money and stuff like that. They thought that their idols could help them. Now, you and I may think this is a little weird. We know that little golden statues can't help anybody. They don't have life in them. They don't have breath in them. They can't move. Yeah, they're pretty useless. They're not worthy of being worshipped. And those little statues really can't save anybody. Well, you don't see a whole lot of those statues around today, do you? Now, people don't really bow down to statues around where we live. We don't see a whole lot of them today, but did you know what? Idols still exist. They just look a little bit different. In fact, you and I might have idols. No, we may not have a statue, but you and I, we still might have idols. You know how you can tell? You just got to ask yourself a simple question. Is anything in your life more important than God? Is anything in your life, does it bring you more joy than God brings you? Do you trust in anything else in your life more than you trust in God? If you answered yes, then you have an idol. It may not be a statue, but you do have an idol, and that's called idolatry. And our problem with our idols today is the same problem they had with their idols back then. Our idols can't save us. They can't help us. And you know what? In the end, they're not going to bring us joy like God can. You know what we need? We need someone to help us get rid of our idols, don't we? We need someone to bring us more joy than the idols in our lives. Now, if you've stuck around long enough, I think you know who that is. That's right, it's Jesus. Jesus tells us that if we trust in him, if we believe that he died on the cross for our sins and was raised to life again on the third day, if we trust that he forgives our sins and we trust that he loves us, then he helps us to get rid of our idols. He helps us to see how wonderful he is, and he will help us every day of our lives until we die. He will help us to love him more and more and help us to realize that he is our ultimate joy. And one day when we're with Jesus, we will finally fully realize that nothing on this earth is as amazing as Jesus. Now that's good news.